was trying to relate Occupy Wall Street with the theme of this conference, and last night, listening to Marina, she sort of took the Argentine case and explained it, so it feels like I would be repeating some of what she had to say, which I totally agree with. So I thought I would talk a little bit about the importance of Occupy Wall Street for the succession of the working, for the success of the working class in the U.S. And I think, my reading of Marx is that he, in many ways, when he did his analysis of capital at the time, he looked specifically at factories. He was very much a social democrat, a reformist within the system. He supported the working class gains, and he supported cooperatives. At different times, he would downplay cooperatives when he felt they weren't strategic and national enough. But in his other mode, he would say, this is the perfect case of a system that uses the workers as capital. The workers are capital. He's always said that workers are capitalist dead workers, in essence. And so in this case, the workers are using capital without the capitalists. And they're fulfilling some of the important criteria for the market without the capitalists running away with the gains and the management running away with the huge salaries. So I think Occupy Wall Street has given fuel, at least for me, for the notion that it's really time for the workers around the country, and now we have the case of the Chicago Windows workers. You recall that 3 years ago it took six days of political support, Obama et al., for the company to accept the fact that they would try to sell the company to another company, Serious Materials it was called at that time, and it changed its name to Serious Resources, that they would take over the factory and the workers could stay. At that moment, I said, this is a mistake. As Ethan has just implied, I think that would be the moment to use the Chicago City Council or aldermen, whatever they're called there, to use eminent domain to take over the factory publicly, cede it to the workers with some subsidies. No question that most workers don't have the income to run a plant themselves. Although many times in Argentina, workers took no pay for 2 months to get a factory moving, to get it going. And the argument was always, what's the difference? I don't get paid for 2 months for creating maintaining a factory, or I go on the street where I have no income at all. So to them, it was an easy decision. So I think workers have the same legitimacy as the Occupy Wall Street to occupy their factories. To me, it's totally in their realm and in their right. I'm not downplaying Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street are people who have seen the light and have understood that capitalism is deeply dysfunctional. But they've been involved in this for 6 months. Doesn't mean they'll not continue for 15 years. I certainly think they will. But these workers who should occupy their factories have been working for 20 years, 30 years in their factory. And why isn't it their factory? Without them, the factory would be nowhere. So the factory belongs to them. I mean, ever since Locke and Hobbes came out with their notion of private property, we've really gone backwards in our definition of private property. Whose property is it? Those who make a go of it, the workers, or those who originally presented the seed money and created the insert of capital to begin with? I think workers have a substantial critical claim for that property. And what we need is a public sector that supports them. I know it doesn't look positive today, but there are many states that are more progressive than other states, and I think it's going to be a kind of regional struggle because we're going to have to struggle in this area. Unemployment is not going to go down. It's unlikely to go down. And how can we maintain employment without workers struggling to take over the factories and maintaining employment? It's very clear in Argentina, when a cooperative has a downturn, nobody gets fired. They all take a pay cut until things reassert themselves, and then they go back up again. They are, in a sense, the owners and the workers at the same time. And I really don't see it as self-exploitation, which some members of the left look at it, because they say the workers have to work so hard and they are really self-exploiting themselves. But I don't buy that at all. Workers under wages are always being exploited without any light at the end of the tunnel. Here, the light at the end of the tunnel is ownership and fulfillment and involvement. I think Marx would roll over in his grave if he heard the kind of condemnatory practice that some on the left attacked the co-ops, because he himself understood the co-ops were a subversive element within capital, showing that capital can be run without capitalists. This is a major revolutionary position that Marx took. I think factory and enterprise occupations would create multiple agencies of confronting capitalism in the United States. I mean, right now, I guess we have about 300 co-ops in the U.S., and they're mostly small, printing presses, bicycle shops, bakeries, Amherst in San Francisco, and so on. But it doesn't have to be that way. I think what we need, and the trade union movement should be inspiring this. Every time an owner of a factory claims bankruptcy or claims that he's moving somewhere else, that factory should be occupied as a reflex, as a generic relationship to that factory. And I think the OWS, and I'm not trying to create as if they're just mindless ground troops. They're not. These people are inspired by tremendous ideological sophistication, but they are available to help out the occupation wherever it occurs. I mean, we have occupied groups throughout the United States, everywhere, and they would be available in every place. And I think factory occupations are the actual place where workers, in a micro sense, are subverting the capitalist ideology, rather than in theory. In a micro sense, they're making it work. Because I've seen in Argentina conservative workers, liberal workers, radical workers, all coming together. It's the best place in the world to socialize all workers as to their role in society. And the cooperatives don't always have a strong doctrinaire left position. But within a few months of running a cooperative, they're all very progressive. They understand who the enemy is, the state and the capitalist system. So it's better than maybe sharing a series of colloquia at a left forum for them to realize what it takes to combat capital and the state and what it means. Also the cooperatives, and I see this in Argentina, they provide an organizational nucleus to reach out to the community. Marina talked about this last night. Since 2004, I've visited about 18 recuperated enterprises in Argentina and many cooperatives that are not recuperated, but they fulfill a niche market, bakery and so on, restaurant, pizza place, a dough place for making pizza, and so on. They provide an organizational nucleus to the community. The best case example is the Sanon factory in Neuquén, a ceramic factory that, by dint of their sophistication, their political wherewithal, they've gotten the support of the people of that community, all 600,000. So whenever they went on strike, whenever they tried to defend their co-op from the police taking it over for the private owners, the Sanon family, the people of that town protected the workers, protected the factory, and allowed it to continue. And I think this is definitely what the OWS has shown us. I saw data in the Times a few months ago that the average American is very supportive of what the OWS people are saying in terms of the financial wherewithal, the capitalist ethos that we're undergoing, the differentiation between the 1% and the rest. All this is fuel for fire for the co-ops to be a legitimate potentiality in this country. So I think a post-OWS culture can emerge, and we can have a move towards an economic democracy, a kind of social democracy. I don't mean that we should give up the ghost of a socialist alternative, but in the interim, as Keynes said, in the interim we'll all be dead. I think the co-ops are a meaningful short-term proposition that confronts capital where it hurts. Now, this is all in terms of a prelude to what I was going to say today. Now, I don't know if, let me just...
Could you say your name, sir?
Peter Ranis.
Thank you.
It was my many years in Argentina before the co-op movement began. I go way back to the second Peronist movement in the 70s. And what I saw, and I learned this from the Argentine workers, that you can be confrontational and mobilizational without necessarily being socialist in Marxist terms. And I saw where workers occupied factories way back in 1969 in Córdoba, that whenever there was a crisis, workers did have the reflex to understand that the working place belonged to them. It didn't always work out as the military intervened in 70, intervened in succeeding years. But Argentina has always had a reflex of co-gestion, as the French call it, co-management of worker employment. So it came to the front again in 2001 in the Argentine crisis. And our post-2008 is very similar to their crisis. And I think we're in a situation where cooperatives can really explode as well in the United States. I don't see where that is not in the cards. And with the Occupy movements, we now have the wherewithal and the cultural stimulus to carry this out. So I'll leave it there, although I have a lot more to say, but I think I'll follow Ethan's model here.